I am a huge fan of Star Wars, and what I wanted to do today was create a 3D space shooter that was a bit distinctive of Star Wars. Now there's some stuff missing, but this just gives you a really clear idea about how far we could take Construct. With some better art designs, we can create these little sort of 3D space scenes. I want to show you how I created this today, so you can have a working spaceship that can move around this 3D plane, and we can even have these trenches that we can go in as well. So let's get started. First thing we need to get started is we just need to click anywhere to go into our layout properties, click view, and we're going to start by changing the Z-axis scale from normalized to regular. This means that when we're using any numbers to do the Z-axis, we can use just our standard numbers that we used for the width and height, and not having to use this 5.8 calculation that you normally have to do. It's one of the new features that came out with the latest update. It's really useful. Next, we can go to our layout, click, and we're just going to add a background color, and this is just going to be black. Now in a 3D space, this makes the whole skybox black, and then we can add some effects after. Let's start by adding in our ship. So we're going to insert a new object. We're going to scroll down. We're going to start with just a normal sprite, so not a 3D one, just a normal one. And it's going to be called Player Collision. And everything that we do is going to go based off this initial object. So for this, what I recommend is just make it whatever color you want, because it's not going to be seen in the game. And then I like to draw an arrow anytime I'm dealing with 3D collision, just to say which way I'm facing. In fact, we can make that a little bit thicker. That just makes it really clear that when we're doing anything, we're facing this way. That'll do. So I'm going to place it in, and I'm just going to resize it a little bit and make it a little bit longer to give me an idea where my ship's going to go. So I want my ship to fill this gap here. So I'm going to start building my ship. So I'm going to insert our first 3D shape. And with these dice, all we're going to do is replace all the sides with just a block color. So we can spend more time adding more details and decorations, but for now, keep it really simple. Just a simple block color all the way through. So this first one is going to be for the wings. So I'm going to click, and maybe black wasn't the right color. Let me just quickly change these all to gray. There we go, so I've got that now. So I'm going to resize it to make it a bit thinner, a little bit longer. And then most importantly is the Z height, which I'm going to drop to about 20. With our wing added, we're going to add some other parts. So let me just rename this to wing. And then going to also add 2 guns. So I'm just going to clone this and rename these guns. So gun 1. I'll put that in, and that's just going to be a little tiny gun on the side there. And I probably want to drop the Z height of this a little bit more, 10. And then again, I'll just take this, clone it once more for gun 2, and I'll place it on the other side. Now we need the body, so I'm going to probably just duplicate my wing and rename this body. And for the body, I'm just going to edit his animation, and I'm just going to go for a bit of an orangey color. I'll just put on all sides. And again, just drag that in there. And we resize this the size we want it to be. For the Z height, I'm going to make this much bigger. Let's go about 35. And expand it across. Like so. About that. And then finally, I'm just going to clone this once more. There's going to be body 2. And body 2 is going to be slightly different because I'm actually going to make this one a wedge. So you see the wedge is facing the wrong way. I'm just going to flip this 180. We got a little wedge at the front, and probably make this just a little bit thinner, and we get the effect more if we scroll down. You can see it there. So a bit of a cheese ship, doesn't look the greatest, but we are still limited inside a construct, and obviously I'm just using block colors. With a bit more time, you can actually create some really good stuff. And if you want to look at some examples, there's a really great tank example that takes loads and loads of parts to make a 3D tank. So what do we need to do next? So we can go back to our Player Collision. And if you can't find this, just click on the Player Collision at the side here. And then we just want to make sure that we've sent this to the top. Now, even though it won't be seen as the top because we're going off Z height, it's the top on our other Z priority list, which is really important because now we can highlight everything, right click, and we can do hierarchy, add selection to this instance. Now this is a bit like pinning in the way it works. It's pinned everything to a central point. Whatever was on the top is the main one that it follows off. So everything's attached to my player, and it's just a quick way of pinning lots of stuff together like these 3D components. So now we've got that in there, we can now start getting this to work with our camera. So we need to insert two objects for our camera. The first one is going to be our 3D camera, and the second one is just going to be a sprite, and we're going to call this camera. And because we're dealing with third person, we just need a placeholder for where the camera is going to be. So I'm just going to get a red circle, I'm going to make it fairly small and just crop it. I'm going to place this where I want this to be. So for this, all I'm going to do is change the Z elevation to be about 90. This just means that the camera is slightly higher up. So we're not looking at the back of our ship, we're looking down above it. So moving on to our code then. First thing I'm going to do is we're going to add every tick. I'm going to set up our 3D camera. So 3D camera, we're going to look parallel to layout, and all these numbers are going to take in our camera. So camera's X, or camera.x, camera.y, camera.z, and then look at angle, and it's going to be camera.angle. Nice and simple. We're going to add a new condition called on start of layout, like so, and then we're going to take our camera, we're going to add first behavior that we need today, and this is just the pin behavior. And all we're going to do is take our camera and just simply pin it to our player's collision. So that's done. Now, final thing we're going to add before we do our first test is just go to our player collision, edit behaviors, and we're going to add the car behavior. Now, car behavior is really good because it allows us to do acceleration, deceleration, turning. So this is a really, really nice one to add and does a lot of the hard work for us. Now, before we do our test, you might want to take your player collision and just scroll down and just make sure it's invisible, and do the same for the camera. If everything's gone okay, we now have a ship that we can turn and we can move. Now, it doesn't appear like we are moving too much. It looks like we're sort of stuck in place. That's just because we've got no reference places or nothing to reference in the world. So let's fix that now, and let's add some stars to this level. We're going to insert a new object, scroll down to sprite, and I'm going to call this star. For the stars, what I did is I just made these pretty much white and resize this to be 5 by 5, and then just fill in the gap in the middle. So there's our stars, and then what we're going to do is going to add some events. So first thing is just a quick global variable, and it's going to be called star count. Now in my demo I had 1,000 stars, but this is a number that we can just change and pick how many stars we want. And then all we're going to do is go to our system variables, and we want 2. So the first one we want is on start of layout, because we want these stars to appear at the very start of the game. And we also want to add one more condition, and this one's going to be called repeat. And we want to repeat for star count. Now every single time we're going through this, we're just going to go to system and create object, and we're going to create a star. And what we need to do is get these X and Y positions in first. So this is going to be a random number. It's going to be anywhere between 0 and layout width. And then same for the other side. So random between 0 and layout height. Now you see that there was no option for the Z-axis. This thing we have to set manually. So we're just going to go to star, scroll down, set Z elevation, and this again is just going to be a random number. This time though we might want to go below the starting position where the player is, because the player is going to start at 0. So I like to do minus 1,000, 1,000. This just gives us lots of room to play around with. So that's all set up, and before we test it, we're just going to click anywhere. We're just going to make our space a bit bigger. So 3000 by 3000 just means that we've got a lot more space where stars are going to spawn. So now when we do our next test, it's going to be filled with all these stars, and now it feels like we're actually moving around because we've got reference points that we can look at. Now it's important to note for this that if you add too many stars in, it's going to get really laggy. So if you're creating a really large level and you want loads and loads of stars everywhere, actually you might want to start looking at render-based stuff where we only render stars that are in the area. But for this short demo, this is absolutely perfectly fine. And now we can fly around left and right around our level. Now if you're noticing that your camera is not quite right at this stage, again you can just come to your camera object and up the Z elevation. So let's up this to 150. I also want to quickly just make my guns a little bit thinner, a bit closer to the edge, just because they're annoying me a little bit. So let's move them a bit closer. And again, this would just give us a slightly different perspective, so the camera will be higher up now, like so. I'm going to put mine back to where it was there before at 90. So now we can move left and right. We also need to be able to move up and down. So to do this, we're going to go to our object types, add a new object, and this is going to be our keyboard. Now you can do this on mouse as well, so you can do it where if you're looking up the screen, it follows the mouse up, and if you're looking down, it follows the mouse down. We're going to keep it really simple today and just go for the keyboard. So we're going to create two global variables for this one. First one is going to be called z-axis, and this is currently where we are on the z-axis. We can leave that 0. And then we want z speed, and we're going to set this to 50. And this is going to control how fast or slow we can move up and down the screen. This one's a bit weird on how I've set it up. Basically, the bigger the number, the slower that we move. And it'll make sense in a bit why that's the case. So keyboard is key down. I'm going to use Z and X for this, but you can use whatever you want in terms of your keys. So if the Z key's down, we're going to go to System. We're going to add to, and we're going to add to the Z-axis. And to add to this, what we're going to do is take player collision dot car, because we want the car properties for this. We're actually going to get the speed that we're currently moving at, and then we're going to divide this by the Z-axis speed. So the higher this number, the slower that we go, and this is all based on how fast we're going in the first place. So as you move faster, and this would happen by just holding the forward key, you'll be able to go up and down a little bit quicker. In order to do the opposite, to go downwards, we can just copy and paste this. We'll change this to X and hit done. And then instead of add to, we're just going to hit back and go down to subtract from. It'll keep your code here as well, which is really nice. So now we can move our Z axis up and down. We need to apply it to our player. So player collision, set Z elevation, and Z axis. And copy and paste this for the other side. Now you see in our test that we're moving up and down, but our camera is not. So it's really easy to fix. All we need to do is go to our pin property, and we actually need to manually turn on the Z elevation, so it tracks our Z elevation as well. And there we go, we're moving up and down inside the space, and the faster we go, the faster we'll move up and down. Last couple of things that we need to do then, just to finish this project completely off, is I'm just going to add a very quick check. So every tick, I'm going to check the player's collision, and I'm going to do turning speed. So set steer speed, and what we're going to do is set this to player collision dot car, and we want the current speed we're moving at, and then we just need to divide this by a number. I think playing around I had it about 10. So if we quickly test this, so again, the faster we move, the faster we steer. So by default, we can't actually turn anymore. And then as we move faster, we're able to turn that a little bit faster as well. May want to drop this down to 5 because it is a little bit sluggish at the moment. Depends what type of ship that you're going for inside your game. And then finally, just to create that sort of aesthetic I had, what I did is I inserted a new object, our 3D shape, and it's going to be our trench. So again, for this, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the top, I'm going to make it quite a light grey, and use the square tool just to change all these blocks. First two I'm going to keep very, very white. I'm going to darken them, and these are going to be the size of the blocks, so it just gives that sort of shadow effect. And before I do anything with this, I'm going to just change the Z elevation. Now the height 120, I'm going to change this to minus 120. So that drops down. And then if we just zoom out, we can start filling this space with our new block. And this is just to make a bit like the Death Star. So if I grab that now, I'll place that in, and we'll have one there, one like so. And for this one, I'm just going to create a simple cross. I'm not going to go in depth as I was last time, but obviously you can play around with this and get the effect that you want as well. Now it's important to note these don't have collision on. I have got a tutorial on how to do 3D collision. I'll put it in the cards now, so if you want to add collision to this and take this a step further, but this is more as an aesthetic. Finally, we just need to actually have a floor or a base to this, because if we play it at the moment, this is just going to be floating in the sky, and it just makes no sense. At the moment it's fine, then as soon as I come over, you'll see that it's floating in the air, random floating blocks. So for our floor, we're just going to copy one more time, set the Z elevation, and this is going to be minus 240, so we're taking 120 away again, 120 being the Z height, and then I'm just going to fill the space with this. And again, this just gives the illusion that there's a bit more to it, it's not just floating. And you can even change the color of this as well if you want a slightly different color floor. But that's it. We've got our space background, we've got our little trench that we're able to fly through, and we've got our ship that's got some custom components and some custom elements to it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. Let me know what other concepts you'd like to see put inside of Construct, and I'll see you in the next video.